The water hit her like a wall the moment she stepped off the bus. A deluge so sudden and merciless that Harper Ellis didn't even have time to pull her blazer over her head before she was completely drenched. Her portfolio case slipped from her fingers, crashing onto the sidewalk as sheets of rain hammered down, soaking through her carefully chosen interview outfit in seconds. She grabbed the case, checked that her design samples were miraculously dry inside their protective sleeve, and ran toward the gleaming glass tower that housed Jenkins Associates architecture firm. By the time she reached the revolving door, her hair hung in wet ropes down her back, mascara probably streaking her cheeks, and her white blouse clinging to her skin in a way that made her want to disappear. The lobby was all marble and modern art, impossibly elegant, and Harper stood there dripping onto the polished floor, watching a small puddle form around her shoes. She wanted to cry. She had worked so hard to get this interview, spent months building her portfolio, practiced her answers until they were perfect. Now she looked like she had just crawled out of a river. "Can I help you?" The receptionist's voice was polite, but her eyes were wide with poorly concealed shock. "I have an interview," Harper said, trying to sound professional despite the water still streaming down her face. "With Sebastian Jenkins, at 2 o'clock. The receptionist checked her computer screen. "Harper Ellis, that's me." Harper attempted a smile. There was a sudden storm outside. "I didn't have an umbrella." "Oh my. Let me call up to his office." The receptionist picked up the phone, speaking in low tones while Harper stood there feeling like a drowned rat, water still dripping from her clothes, her confidence dissolving with each passing second. She had heard stories about Sebastian Jenkins. 32 years old, already a billionaire from his revolutionary sustainable architecture designs that had transformed skylines across 3 continents. Demanding, brilliant, impossibly exacting, and she was about to meet him looking like this. The elevator ride to the 45th floor felt eternal. Harper tried to wring water from her blazer, attempted to fix her hair with shaking fingers, but it was useless. When the doors opened, she stepped into a reception area that was somehow even more intimidating than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, rain still lashing against the glass. A woman in an immaculate gray suit looked up from her desk. "Harper Ellis." She stood, her expression carefully neutral despite Harper's bedraggled appearance. "Mr. Jenkins will see you now. He's expecting you." Harper's stomach dropped. "Is there perhaps a restroom where I could," he asked, "that you come straight in? He knows about the storm." There was no escape. Harper clutched her portfolio case and followed the assistant down a short hallway to a set of double doors. The woman knocked once, opened the door, and gestured Harper inside. The office was massive, all clean lines and natural light despite the storm outside. And standing by the windows, hands in his pockets, was Sebastian Jenkins. He turned as she entered, and Harper's breath caught despite her misery. He was taller than she had expected from the photos she had seen online, broad-shouldered in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Dark hair, strong jaw, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to cut through the gray light of the storm. He looked at her for a long moment, taking in her soaked clothes, her dripping hair, the small puddle forming beneath her once again. Then he did something unexpected. He walked across the room, not to his desk, but to a small closet near the door. He pulled out a thick, soft towel. "Here," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. He handed her the towel. "The building's HVAC system is notorious for creating microclimates. You will freeze in those wet clothes. Thank you." Harper took the towel gratefully, pressing it to her face and hair. "I am so sorry. The storm came out of nowhere and I did not have time to. You're hired." Harper froze, the towel still pressed to her cheek. "I'm sorry, what?" Sebastian gestured to a chair near his desk. Don't sit yet. You are soaking. But you are hired. I looked at your portfolio last night. The community center redesign you did for your thesis project was exceptional. The way you incorporated natural light and green spaces, while working within an extremely limited budget, showed exactly the kind of innovative thinking I need. Your approach to sustainable design aligns perfectly with our firm's vision. Harper stared at him, water still dripping from her elbows onto his expensive carpet. You're hiring me, but we have not even done the interview. You have not asked me any questions. I don't need to. Sebastian moved to his desk, picked up a folder and opened it. Harper recognized her own work staring back at her. I've been reviewing applications for this position for 3 months. Do you know how many I've looked at? 237. Yours was the only one that made me stop and think, the only one that showed real vision. But I look like... Harper gestured helplessly at herself. You look like someone who got caught in a freak rainstorm and still showed up, Sebastian said. He leaned back against his desk, arms crossed, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. Do you know how many candidates I've interviewed who cancel because of traffic, or weather, or because their coffee order was wrong? You got drenched and came anyway. That tells me more about your character than any scripted interview question would. Harper's mind was spinning. This was not how she had imagined this going. Mr. Jenkins, Sebastian, if we are going to work together, use my name. Sebastian. The name felt strange on her tongue, too familiar for someone she had just met. This is incredibly generous, but I need to know what the position actually entails. Your job posting was somewhat vague. For the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Smart. Don't just accept an offer blindly. I like that. He moved around his desk, pulled out a document, and handed it to her. Junior architect position with a focus on sustainable residential design. I'm launching a new division specifically for affordable eco-friendly housing. Not luxury condos for the wealthy, but actual homes that regular people can afford to live in. I need someone who understands that architecture should serve communities, not just egos. Harper looked down at the document, but the words were blurring. Not from the water in her eyes, but from the sudden swell of emotion. This was exactly what she had dreamed of. Exactly what had driven her through 7 years of school while working 3 jobs to pay for it. The salary is more than fair, Sebastian continued. Health benefits, 4 weeks vacation, and you will work directly with me on the initial projects until you get up to speed. Harper looked up at him. Why me? Really? There must have been candidates with more experience. Sebastian was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes holding hers. Because your work has heart. It's not just about aesthetics or even functionality. When I looked at your designs, I could see that you were thinking about the people who would live in those spaces. How the light would fall across a kitchen table in the morning. How a child might play in that courtyard. How an elderly person would navigate those hallways. That is rare. Most architects are designing monuments to themselves. You are designing homes. The words hit Harper square in the chest. She had never heard her work described that way, but it was exactly what she tried to do. She thought about her own childhood, growing up in cramped apartments where the windows faced brick walls, where the only green space was a weedy lot 3 blocks away. She designed spaces she wished she had grown up in. I accept, she said quietly, and thank you for seeing that. Sebastian extended his hand. Welcome to the team. Can you start Monday? Harper shook his hand, very aware of how warm his palm was against her cold, wet skin. Monday is perfect. Good. Now go home, get dry, and don't catch pneumonia before your first day. He released her hand but did not step back. My assistant will email you all the paperwork and details. Harper nodded, clutching the towel and her portfolio case, still somewhat in shock. She made it to the door before she turned back. Sebastian was watching her, an expression on his face she could not quite read. "Thank you," she said again. "Really?" "Don't thank me yet," he said, but there was warmth in his voice. "I work my team hard. You will earn every penny of that salary." Harper smiled, a real smile this time despite her bedraggled state. "I would not want it any other way." She left his office feeling like she was floating, barely noticing the rain that had slowed to a drizzle as she made her way home to her tiny studio apartment. She had a job. A real job at one of the most prestigious architecture firms in the country, working on projects that actually mattered. She did not let herself think about the way Sebastian's eyes had lingered on her face, or how her heart had stuttered when he smiled. That was just adrenaline from the interview. Nothing more. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Harper wore her best navy dress and heels, her hair pulled back in a professional bun. She arrived at the office 30 minutes early, determined to make a good impression that did not involve being soaking wet. Sebastian's assistant, whose name was Margaret, greeted her warmly and gave her a tour of the office. The architecture firm took up 3 entire floors of the building, with open workspaces, private offices for senior architects, and several large conference rooms where project teams could spread out their designs. Margaret showed her to a desk near a window, the city sprawling out below. "Sebastian wants to see you in his office once you're settled," Margaret said. "He has the project files ready for you." Harper's stomach fluttered nervously. She dropped her bag at her desk, took a breath to steady herself, and headed up 1 floor to Sebastian's office. He was on the phone when she knocked, but he waved her in, gesturing to one of the chairs across from his desk. She sat, trying not to stare at him. In the morning light streaming through the windows, he looked even more striking than he had on Friday. Strong features, intense focus as he listened to whoever was on the other end of the line. He was wearing a navy suit today, crisp white shirt, no tie. Professional but somehow still relaxed, he ended the call and turned his full attention to her. "Good morning. Feeling drier today?" Harper felt her cheeks warm. "Much drier, thank you." "Excellent." He pulled a thick folder from a drawer and set it in front of her. "This is the Riverside project, 50 units of affordable housing on a lot in the South District. The previous architect I hired completely missed the vision, gave me generic boxes that looked like a prison complex. I fired him 2 weeks ago." Harper opened the folder, studying the site plans and preliminary sketches. Sebastian was right. They were soulless, utilitarian to the point of being depressing. "I want you to start fresh," Sebastian said. "Keep the basic footprint requirements and budget constraints, but redesign everything else. I want natural light, communal green spaces, layouts that actually make sense for families. Show me what you can do." Harper looked up at him, her mind already racing with ideas. "When do you need preliminary sketches? End of the week. Can you do it?" It was a tight timeline, but Harper nodded. "Yes, absolutely. Good." Sebastian stood, came around the desk, and leaned against it, closer to her now. "I'm giving you a lot of responsibility right out of the gate. If you need help, ask. Don't flounder trying to prove you can do everything alone. My senior architects are resources. Use them." "I will," Harper said. She stood, clutching the folder to her chest. "I won't let you down. I know you won't." His voice was quiet, confident. His eyes held hers for a beat too long, and Harper felt that flutter in her chest again. She forced herself to look away first. The week passed in a blur. Harper threw herself into the Riverside project, sketching and resketching, playing with layouts and orientations. She consulted with 2 of the senior architects, both of whom were generous with their time and expertise. She stayed late every night, the office emptying around her until it was just the cleaning crew and the glow of her desk lamp. On Wednesday evening, she was so absorbed in her work that she did not notice someone approaching until Sebastian's voice broke through her concentration. "It's almost 9, he said. "Go home, Harper." She jumped, nearly knocking over her coffee mug. Sebastian stood a few feet away, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked tired but amused. "I just want to finish this section," Harper said, gesturing to her sketches. "You have been here since 7 this morning. I know because I was here too." Sebastian moved closer, looking down at her work. His proximity made her hyper-aware of everything. The scent of his cologne, clean and woodsy. The way his forearm muscles moved as he pointed to one of her sketches. "This is good. Really good." Harper looked at where he was pointing. She had redesigned the central courtyard to include tiered gardens, giving every unit a view of greenery while creating natural gathering spaces. "You think so? I know so. But you need to sleep. Eat something that is not vending machine food and come back fresh tomorrow." He straightened, looking down at her with an expression that seemed almost concerned. "I meant it when I said I work my team hard, but I don't want to burn you out in your first week. I don't want to disappoint you. You couldn't if you tried." The words were simple, but the way he said them made Harper's breath catch. Sebastian cleared his throat, stepped back. "Go home. That's an order from your boss." Harper saved her work and packed up her things. As she waited for the elevator, she glanced back to see Sebastian still standing by her desk, watching her. He lifted his hand in a small wave. She waved back, then stepped into the elevator, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with work. By Friday afternoon, Harper had a complete set of preliminary designs ready. She had barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination, but she was proud of what she had created. The buildings were modern but warm, using sustainable materials and passive solar design to reduce energy costs. Every unit had access to outdoor space. The central courtyard featured community gardens, a playground, and shaded seating areas. It was everything she believed affordable housing should be. Margaret scheduled her presentation for 4 o'clock. Harper set up her sketches and digital renderings in one of the conference rooms, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged everything. This was it. Her first real project. If Sebastian hated it, if she had misunderstood what he wanted, the door opened. Sebastian walked in, followed by 2 other people Harper recognized as the senior partners of the firm. Her anxiety spiked. "I asked Richard and Janet to sit in," Sebastian explained, seeing her expression. "They have experience with municipal approval processes that will be valuable for this project." Harper nodded, swallowed hard, and began her presentation. She walked them through her design philosophy, the specific choices she had made, how she had maximized natural light and airflow while staying within budget. She pointed out the communal spaces, explained how the tiered gardens would be maintained through a resident cooperative program. She talked about the children who would play in that courtyard, the families who would gather in those green spaces, the seniors who would tend those gardens. When she finished, there was silence. Harper's heart was hammering so hard she was sure they could hear it. Richard spoke first. "This is exceptional work, especially for someone fresh out of school," Janet nodded. "The Community Garden Cooperative is a brilliant touch. It builds ownership and pride, reduces maintenance costs, and creates social bonds between residents." Harper looked at Sebastian. He was studying the renderings, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up at her. "This is exactly what I wanted," he said quietly. "This is what affordable housing should look like, beautiful, dignified, full of life." Relief flooded through Harper so intensely she had to grip the edge of the table. "So we can move forward," We can. I'll set up a meeting with the City Planning Commission for next month. You will present this to them. Sebastian stood, moved closer to examine one of the detail sketches. I want you as the lead architect on this project, working directly with me. Are you ready for that? Yes, Harper said without hesitation. Good. Sebastian looked at Richard and Janet. Let's make this happen. The senior partners left, already discussing scheduling and budget allocations. Sebastian started gathering the sketches, handling them carefully. You should celebrate tonight. This is a big win. I think I'm just going to sleep for 12 hours, Harper admitted. Sebastian laughed, the sound warm and genuine. It transformed his face, softening the intensity that was usually there. That's probably smarter than my celebration plans, which are whiskey and paperwork in my office. He handed her the stack of sketches. The glamorous life of a billionaire architect. It was the first time he had referenced his wealth directly. Harper found herself curious. Is it lonely? Being at the top? Sebastian looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. That's a perceptive question. Most people just see the money and assume everything else is perfect. Money doesn't buy companionship or connection. No, it doesn't. His voice was quieter now, more personal. It actually makes real connection harder. You never know if people want to know you or just what you can do for them. Harper met his eyes. For what it's worth, I wanted this job before I knew how much you were worth. I would have taken half the salary just to work on projects like this. Don't tell me that, Sebastian said, but there was warmth in his voice. I'll feel guilty for not negotiating you down. Harper laughed. Too late now. They stood there in the conference room, the sketches between them, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. Something had shifted. They were not just boss and employee anymore. They were two people who understood each other's passion, who saw the world in similar ways. Have dinner with me, Sebastian said suddenly. Not to celebrate, or maybe to celebrate, but also just because I'd like to have dinner with you. Harper's heart stopped. Sebastian, I know it's complicated. I'm your boss. There are power dynamics and professional boundaries. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed almost frustrated. But I have not been able to stop thinking about you since you walked into my office dripping wet and still determined to nail that interview. Tell me I'm not imagining that there's something here. Harper should have said no. Should have been professional, maintained boundaries, protected her career. Instead, she found herself saying, "You're not imagining it." The relief on his face was palpable. So dinner, Harper agreed, ignoring every warning bell in her head, but nowhere too fancy. I cannot afford the kind of restaurants you probably go to, my treat, and I know a place that is perfect. Sebastian gathered up the rest of her materials, handed them to her. Go home, change into something comfortable. I'll pick you up at 7. Text Margaret your address. Harper left the office in a daze, clutching her sketches, wondering what she had just agreed to. This was reckless, potentially career-ending. But when she thought about the way Sebastian had looked at her, the way he saw her work, understood her vision, she could not bring herself to regret it. She went home to her studio apartment and stood in front of her meager closet for 20 minutes. Comfortable, he had said. She chose dark jeans, a soft green sweater that brought out her eyes, and ankle boots, casual but still put together. She left her hair down, applied minimal makeup, and tried to calm her racing heart. At precisely 7, her phone buzzed. He was downstairs. Harper grabbed her jacket and headed down, pushing through the lobby door to find Sebastian leaning against a sleek black car. But it was not some ostentatious sports car or chauffeur-driven limo. It was a Tesla, understated and practical. Of course, he drove an electric car. The man built sustainable architecture for a living. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy. "Hi." Sebastian opened the passenger door for her. "You look beautiful," you said, comfortable. "You look comfortably beautiful." He closed her door and walked around to the driver's side. As he slid in, he glanced at her. "Ready? Ready for what exactly?" "Good food, good conversation, and for me to pretend that I am not your boss for a few hours so I can get to know you without feeling like I'm abusing my position." Harper buckled her seatbelt. "That's a lot to accomplish over one dinner. I'm an ambitious person." The restaurant was not what Harper expected. It was a small Italian place in a neighborhood she had never explored, the kind of spot that locals knew about but tourists never found. The lighting was warm and low, there were checkered tablecloths on the tables, and the smell of garlic and fresh bread filled the air. "This place has been here for 40 years, Sebastian explained as they were seated at a corner table. "The owner is a friend of my father's. Best pasta in the city and no pretension." A waiter appeared, greeting Sebastian by name, and they ordered wine for her, water for him because he was driving. Then they were alone, the buzz of conversation around them creating a bubble of privacy. "Tell me something about yourself that's not in your resume," Sebastian said, leaning back in his chair, his full attention on her. Harper thought about it. "I'm afraid of birds. Birds, specifically pigeons. They're unpredictable and they have those beady little eyes." She shuddered. "I know it's irrational." Sebastian's laugh was surprised and delighted. "I did not expect that." Noted. "No site visits to parks with heavy pigeon populations. What about you? What's something you're afraid of?" His smile faded slightly. "Becoming my father." The honesty in his voice made Harper lean forward. "Tell me about him." "He was a brilliant architect. Technically, he's retired now, but he cared more about his buildings than the people in his life. My mother left him when I was 10 because he was never home, never present even when he was physically there. I barely knew him growing up. When I started this firm, I promised myself I would be different, that I would build things that mattered and also have a life worth living." "Is that why you focus on sustainable and affordable housing, instead of skyscrapers and monuments?" "Partly. Also because those projects feel more meaningful. Anyone with enough money can build a tower. But creating housing that gives people dignity, that fits into communities instead of displacing them, that takes real skill and vision." The food arrived, steaming plates of pasta and fresh bread. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing easily. Harper told him about growing up in a single-parent household, her mother working 2 jobs to support them, the cramped apartments that had inspired her to become an architect. Sebastian talked about the pressure of being a prodigy, earning his first million by 25, and the isolation that came with rapid success. "Everyone wanted something from me," he said, twirling pasta on his fork. "Investors wanted money. Competitors wanted my designs. Women wanted the lifestyle. I stopped trusting that anyone saw me as just Sebastian." "That sounds exhausting." "It was. It is." He met her eyes across the table. "That's why Friday surprised me. You walked in looking like a disaster and you were so focused on the job, on the work. You did not even try to flirt or impress me personally. You just wanted to talk about architecture. To be fair, I was busy being mortified about dripping all over your carpet. You made quite an impression. Literally. There was a puddle." Harper threw a piece of bread at him. He caught it, grinning, and the moment felt wonderfully normal. Easy. Like they were just 2 people getting to know each other, not a billionaire and his new employee navigating complicated professional and personal boundaries. After dinner, Sebastian drove her home but parked on the street instead of just dropping her off. "I should walk you up," he said. "That's not necessary." "I know, but I want to." He got out, came around to open her door. They walked into her building together, took the elevator to the 4th floor, At her apartment door, Harper turned to face him. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "I had a really good time." "So did I." Sebastian reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "I want to see you again, outside of work. Is that something you want too?" Harper knew she should be cautious. But standing there with him so close, his blue eyes searching hers, she could not find it in herself to lie. "Yes, I want that." "Good." He leaned down, pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "Good night, Harper." "Good night." She let herself into her apartment, closed the door, and leaned against it, her heart racing. This was happening. Whatever this was, it was real and it was happening. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. At work, they were professional. Sebastian was her boss, demanding and exacting, pushing her to refine her designs for the Riverside project. But after hours, they were something else. They had dinner together 3 times a week. They walked through the city, talking about everything and nothing. He took her to a jazz club. She dragged him to a street fair where they ate terrible carnival food and laughed like teenagers. Harper met Sebastian's younger sister, Sophie, a marine biologist who immediately pulled Harper aside and whispered, "I have never seen him this happy. Don't break his heart." Sebastian met Harper's mother, Elena, who fed him enough food for 3 people and then cornered Harper in the kitchen. "He is a good man. You can see it in his eyes. But be careful, sweetheart. Men with that much money live in different worlds than we do." They did not talk about what they were doing, did not put labels on it. Harper told herself it was just dating, just getting to know each other. She tried to ignore the fact that she was falling for him. Hard. The City Planning Commission meeting arrived. Harper presented the Riverside project to a room full of bureaucrats and city officials. Sebastian sitting in the back, his presence a steadying force. She fielded questions, explained her design choices, made the case for why this project would benefit the community. When the commission unanimously approved the project, Harper wanted to cry with relief. Sebastian caught her as they left the building, pulled her into a crushing hug right there on the steps. "You were incredible," he said into her hair. "Absolutely incredible. We did it," Harper breathed. "It's really going to happen. It's going to happen." He pulled back, his hands on her shoulders, his smile wider than she had ever seen it. "This calls for a real celebration, not whiskey and paperwork, actual champagne." He took her to his penthouse apartment, a space she had never seen before. It was stunning but surprisingly warm, filled with books and art and signs of actual life. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights twinkling in the darkness. Sebastian opened a bottle of champagne, poured 2 glasses and handed her one. "To the Riverside Project, and to you." They toasted, drank. Harper moved to the windows, looking out at the view. She could see the South District from here, the lot where her buildings would soon stand. 50 families are going to have homes because of you," Sebastian said, coming to stand beside her. "Do you understand how significant that is? Because of us, mostly you, I just write the checks and intimidate city officials." He set his glass down, turned to face her fully. "Harper, I need to tell you something." Her heart started pounding. "Okay. I am completely in love with you." The words were simple, direct, devastating in their honesty. "I have been since the moment you stood in my office soaking wet and still ready to fight for that job. You are brilliant and passionate, and you see the world the way I do. You make me want to be better, do better, build things that actually matter. And I know this is complicated because I'm your boss and there are professional implications, but I cannot keep pretending that what I feel for you is anything less than love." Harper stared at him, her champagne glass forgotten in her hand. "Sebastian, if you don't feel the same way, tell me now. We will go back to being professional colleagues and I will never bring this up again. But if there's any chance that you feel even a fraction of what I feel, Harper set her glass down and kissed him, threw her arms around his neck and pressed her mouth to his, cutting off his words. Sebastian made a surprised sound, then his arms came around her waist, pulling her close. The kiss was everything Harper had imagined and more. Urgent and sweet, full of weeks of pent-up longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Harper kept her forehead pressed to his. "I love you too. I have been terrified to admit it, but I do. I love you." Sebastian's answering smile was brilliant. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. They stood there in his living room, wrapped around each other, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. "What do we do now?" Harper whispered. "About work, about everything." "We figure it out," Sebastian said. "Together. Maybe we talk to HR, make sure everything is documented properly. Maybe we're more careful about keeping our relationship separate from work. But I'm not giving you up. I have spent 10 years building a business. I will find a way to keep both you and my professional integrity. I don't want special treatment at work. You won't get it. I'll probably be harder on you than anyone else just to avoid accusations of favoritism." "Good." Harper kissed him again, still marveling that she could do this now that he was hers. "I can handle it." They spent the rest of the night talking, planning, kissing on his couch like teenagers. Harper did not go home until dawn was breaking over the city, and even then, Sebastian was reluctant to let her leave. The next months were a delicate balance. At work, they maintained professional boundaries. Harper worked harder than ever, determined to prove she deserved her position on merit alone. The Riverside project moved forward, breaking ground in early spring. Sebastian was right that he was harder on her than the other architects, pushing her to refine every detail, questioning every decision. But Harper understood. This was how they protected what they had. After hours, they were inseparable. Sebastian's penthouse became their haven, a place where they could be just Harper and Sebastian, no titles or complications. They cooked dinner together, debated design philosophy, made love with an intensity that left them both breathless. Harper met Sebastian's father, a stern man who looked at her designs and actually smiled. "You have vision," he said. "My son chose well." Sebastian held her hand under the table, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. 6 months after the Riverside project broke ground, Sebastian called Harper into his office on a Friday afternoon. She went, wondering if there was a problem with the construction. But when she walked in, he was standing by the windows, his hands in his pockets, looking nervous. "Close the door," he said. Harper did, her concern growing. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I've been thinking about something." He turned to face her, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made her breath catch. "We have been together for 8 months, living together for 3. I wake up next to you every morning and it's the best part of my day. You challenge me, inspire me, make me laugh. You're my partner in every way that matters. Sebastian, you're scaring me." He crossed the room, took her hands. "Don't be scared, I'm just terrible at this." He took a breath, met her eyes. "Harper Ellis, will you marry me?" Harper's heart stopped. "What?" Sebastian pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring. Not some ostentatious diamond, but a beautiful sapphire surrounded by smaller stones, elegant and understated. "I love you. I want to spend my life building things with you, both literally and figuratively. I want to wake up next to you for the next 50 years. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Harper's face. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." Sebastian slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her, lifting her off her feet. They were laughing and crying and kissing all at once, there in his office with the city sprawling below them. "We're getting married," Harper said, staring at the ring on her finger in wonder. "We are. Although my HR department is going to have a field day with the paperwork." Sebastian was grinning. happier than she had ever seen him. Worth it, though. Completely worth it. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the community center of the Riverside Project, which was now complete and filling with families. Harper wore a simple ivory dress. Sebastian cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. They exchanged vows surrounded by friends, family, and the residents of the community they had built together. 2 years later, Harper stood in that same courtyard, her hand resting on her swollen belly, watching children play in the garden she had designed. Sebastian came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her and their unborn daughter, pressed a kiss to her temple. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "That rainstorm," Harper said, leaning back against him. "If I hadn't gotten completely soaked, if I had canceled the interview, or you had decided I was too much of a mess, I would have missed out on the best thing that ever happened to me." Sebastian turned her in his arms, looked down at her with all the love in the world shining in his blue eyes. "You showed up anyway, Harper. Even when everything went wrong, you showed up. That's why I hired you. That's why I fell in love with you. And that's why I know our daughter is going to have the strongest mother in the world." Harper kissed him there in the courtyard they had created together, surrounded by the community they had built, carrying the future they had made. It had started with a rainstorm and a reckless decision. It had become everything. 3 years later, the firm had grown. Harper was now a senior architect, leading her own team on a revolutionary low-income housing project that was being replicated in cities across the country. Sebastian had stepped back slightly from day-to-day operations, choosing to spend more time with their daughter, Emma, who had his blue eyes and Harper's stubborn determination. They had bought a house in the suburbs, a fixer-upper that they were slowly renovating together on weekends. Emma toddled through the construction chaos, wearing a tiny hard hat that Sebastian had custom-made for her. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to Sebastian's office, now shared equally with Harper's name on the door beside his. They stood at the windows, looking out at the city they were slowly transforming, one community at a time. "You ever regret it?" Harper asked. "Hiring me on the spot like that?" Sebastian pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "Not for a single second. Best impulsive decision I ever made. I was such a mess that day. You were perfect." He turned her to face him. "You are perfect, and I would relive that rainstorm 1,000 times if it meant ending up right here with you." Harper looked at her husband, the father of her child, her partner in every sense of the word. She thought about that terrified girl who had shown up to an interview soaking wet and desperate for a chance. She never could have imagined this. The love, the family, the life they had built together. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too." Sebastian kissed her slow and deep, a promise renewed. Now and always. Below them, the city glittered in the afternoon sun, full of possibility and promise. Somewhere in the South District, families were coming home to the buildings Harper had designed, living in spaces filled with light and life and dignity. And in this office, high above it all, two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way held each other close and dreamed about what they would build next, together. Always together.